Let me ask you, have you ever stood on the edge of your life and realized you had no idea what's about to happen next? Right there, between what was safe and what is sacred, when your plans suddenly shattered and all the doors you trusted slammed shut. Did you wonder if someone greater was the true author of your story? Stay with me, because today I'm not just passing on information, I'm opening a doorway. In the next few minutes, something holy might just haunt you, and my prayer is that you never see your journey the same way again. For over 20 years, I've shepherded people through the confusing terrain between the world's logic and heaven's unfolding plan. Time after time, I've watched believers wrestle with the frightening beauty of divine disruption when God interrupts the familiar with his unexplainable provision. I need you to understand, your current circumstance was never meant to merely challenge you. It was designed to transform you. Let's dive deeper. There comes a point, often right in the middle of our well-constructed strategies, where God himself writes a new script. I have seen it as a pastor, a teacher, a father. 1,000 faces across decades light up in that moment of revelation. We spend years, sometimes decades, depending on our own logic, working hard, laying foundations by numbers and plans, building with sweat and good sense, until God, in his unfathomable wisdom, steps onto the stage, gently yet firmly redirecting the play. I remember sitting with a young leader once, tears on his face, plans in ruins. "Pastor," he said, "I did everything right. Why does it feel like everything is falling apart?" What he couldn't see in that valley was that what looked like collapse was actually the loving hand of the Father making room for the miraculous. We have all stood there. In hardship and uncertainty, it's easy to think we've lost our way or missed the mark. But, my child, you are precisely where his hand has led you, and the story's not over. See, when God is our source, and I mean truly our source, not just in word but in the marrow of our bones, the methods of this world lose their authority over our peace. Others may be perplexed. They might whisper, "How is she still standing? How did he build without debt, without connections?" Their confusion is your confirmation. Heaven's fingerprints are all over the inexplicable in your life. This is where provision moves from visible to invisible. It's not a transaction, it's sacred supply. It's sustenance that flows not from paychecks or applause, but from a realm so hidden, so holy, that only the soul sensitive to God's voice can perceive it. Provision will come in such unlikely ways that no one can take credit but the Lord himself. And maybe right now, as you're listening to these words, your future feels scattered. Paths that used to work don't work any longer. What brought blessing before now brings frustration. Old behaviors, friendships, habits, they feel heavy, foreign, or simply faded away. Like a craftsman, God is chiseling away anything that would limit the masterpiece he has destined you to become. He is asking you to put down self-effort as your ultimate strength, not because effort is wrong, but because it was never meant to carry you into the next season. That was just for the last chapter. Ahead of you is a new way, a divine flow where time bends, burdens lift, and what once felt impossible becomes effortless. You see, the world tells us to plan, to connect, to calculate, and to hustle. But the kingdom says, trust, obey, watch. Your simple yes, my yes, day after day is what unlocks favor that money can't buy and opens doors that striving never could. Now, hear me. Sometimes that means certain people will exit your life. Don't weep over what was removed or who didn't stay. Understand that it's God making space, not rejecting you, but refining you. He is calling you forward to things your own plans could never have arranged. Freedom often walks hand in hand with release. Some will misunderstand your journey. They will question your pace, your silence, your changed priorities. What they can't see is that now you are no longer chasing, but following. It is not about running after every opportunity, but being led to the one that was meant for you. That's why provision will begin showing up in the most unusual places, on a schedule that puzzles the world but fits heaven's timetable to perfection. Beloved, I remind every soul under my care, the visible outcome is never the whole truth. Beneath what everyone can see, divine backing, unseen, unearned, but utterly reliable, sustains you. People will begin to notice. How are you making it? How do things come together for you when you have so little to work with? Know this, that is not luck or coincidence, but God gently breaking the rules for those who dare to trust Him. Your spiritual progress often won't show on spreadsheets or resumes. You might look behind, counting all you lost, but God is measuring how you grew. Don't despise the quiet seasons. These are the years when roots go deep and unseen support is drawn. Your assignment, your life's call, is unique, sacred, and it never moves forward alone. If He calls you, He commits to resource you. If He appointed you, He guarantees the help will come. Because here is a secret I wish I'd grasped earlier in my walk. Supply is not random, it is released by confidence in God's voice. The world can't see the why of your peace, your resilience, your progress, but to heaven, it makes perfect sense. Strength doesn't come just from repetition and routine, but from living in sync with divine rhythm. What about when needs come quicker than answers? When supply appears only after your first step? That, I promise you, is how God trains us to move by faith, not by fear. Assistance, ideas, new friendships, sudden favor will arise as you move forward. In my ministry, I have witnessed the most profound doors open only after risking the next step into the fog of uncertainty. If the journey feels dark, it's just the distance your eyes haven't traveled yet. God has already walked it ahead of you. You are never as alone as you feel. Invisible hands clear the path, hearts you never met are stirred for your cause. Resources show up by a hand unseen. This is the fruit of radical trust. No, you aren't falling behind. You aren't overlooked or forgotten. You are walking to a rhythm that the world cannot hear. And your steps, every stagger, every bold stride awaken new provision that logic cannot explain. This is the truth that will sustain you. Your help comes from a place only God can see. So, breathe in, let these words anchor you. You are not moving forward by accident or effort alone. You're being carried, even now, by the love and provision of the one whose ways always make a way. Let me take you back to a night I can never forget. Years ago, while pacing the floor of my study, I wrestled with a burden so heavy I almost buckled under its weight. My blueprint for life had just unraveled. The support I'd always counted on seemed to vanish overnight. I had labored, calculated, prayed, and built brick by brick, using every ounce of wisdom I'd acquired, both from scripture and life itself. Yet there I stood, surrounded by unfinished plans and the echo of doors closing one by one. It was in that moment of soul-deep silence that I heard it, not a voice in the ear, but thunder in my spirit. "Let go of your map, and let me show you my way." That sentence became an anchor in storm after storm. You see, God's love is not always gentle in its methods, but it is always purposeful. We plan, but the Lord redirects, and oh, how that can break us open in ways we'd never have chosen. But listen, what we feel as breakdown, God intends as breakthrough. He will reroute your journey to places you never saw coming, and sometimes His provision demands that certain doors close, so new ones can be flung wide on hinges forged in heaven. I have seen this not only in my story, but in untold lives I've shepherded. The father desperate for work, the mother wondering how to rebuild when her world collapsed, the student frightened by the uncertainty ahead, all found hope when their desperate grip loosened just enough for God to place something better in their hands. Looking back, I realize that our grip on logic can become a cage. We rely on consistency, on proven methods because they once worked, and we forget that God makes rivers in deserts and roads through seas. There will always be a crossroads, a moment when the Lord interrupts your well-oiled routine, blocks paths you thought were meant for you, and lets silence stretch longer than you hoped. This is not punishment, but preparation. If your path seems altered without your consent, if your resources feel cut off, if what once made sense has grown strange, rejoice. I know that flies in the face of common sense, yet throughout all of Scripture, great leaders have discovered that what looks like a delay is often God's timetable for destiny. Moses saw it in the wilderness, Elijah beneath the broom tree, and Jesus, most of all, in the silent stretch between cross and resurrection. Sometimes, stepping into God's flow means the river you've always drawn from dries up. Why? So you'll learn to lean not on your own understanding, but on the daily, supernatural supply He alone can give. Provision is shifting in your life, and it looks nothing like the world's model. It is grace that cannot be explained, and favor that cannot be earned, alive, responsive, untracked by formulas. What once required striving now comes by surrender. Doors you once battered down will unlock at your arrival. The effort you expended to push through life's walls now gives way to a grace that opens windows in the clouds. It won't always make sense, and in truth, it won't always feel easy at first. Trust rarely does, but as you step, you'll discover lightness where heaviness dwelt, and movement where you were once stuck. Let me tell you about Margaret, a widow who lost her husband and nearly everything overnight. She wandered into my church, shoulders stooped, voice barely a whisper. She sat quietly, week after week, listening, praying, slowly releasing her plans for what her life should have been. And then, God began to move. Favor came not from inheritances or the systems of this world, but through unexplained kindness, food on her doorstep, work that fit her weariness, a surge of hope that overcame the grief. These were the gifts of trust, miracles the world still calls coincidence. You have a sacred assignment. Do not minimize the holy weight of your existence. Your purpose is not random, nor is your assignment self-made. Maybe you too have wondered, how do I keep moving forward when I am missing the scaffoldings I once leaned on? Here, this heaven's strategy unfolds one obedient step at a time. In this journey, Not everyone will understand your seasons of quiet. The world may see inactivity, but God sees preparation. It's not your job to explain your calling to critics or seek validation from a world that doesn't understand spiritual momentum. Let your movement be in step with the Spirit's cadence, not with the rush of those around you. When you finally embrace that your delays and disappointments are not dead ends but divine detours, you begin to live with a freedom that nothing earthly can supply. You didn't lose friend, you were led. You weren't delayed, you were developed. And when the world measures your progress with its limited yardsticks, remember this: the greatest treasures are always unearthed in hidden places. God does not require perfection from you, He asks for agreement. Just your simple yes, each surrendered morning, opens a passage for heaven's supply. It's your willingness to go where He leads, to lay down what He asks, to trust the step even when the whole staircase is shrouded. If you have the impression that all the supply must come first before you obey, let me remind you, provision follows obedience. It rises to meet you after each leap of faith. Expect the unexpected help from sources you didn't cultivate, favor from faces you've never met, opportunities arising just after former doors shut. Your story will not make sense to those who live with calculators and contracts. Let it be so. For when God desires the glory alone, He makes sure no hand but His provides the blessing. You're not surviving by luck. You're thriving because the Creator delights in your trust. You carry favor that can neither be negotiated nor reversed, a holy guarantee that carries you straight through the thickets of impossibility. When you surrender striving, heaven orchestrates every provision, every appointment, every breakthrough with a precision you could never engineer. So, to the weary, the confused, the one afraid your detour means you missed the mark, hear the heart of a father who's seen God's reversal again and again. Nothing is wasted. He has not forgotten you. This temporary uncertainty is the birthplace of the next miracle. Even now, unseen supply is making its way toward you. When those around you wonder how, why you? How can you build with so little? Just smile. You are living proof that favor outshines fortune, that trust trumps talent, and that one yes to God builds more than 1,000 busy efforts. The world may never understand the story being written over your days, but it is a story for the ages. Courage, beloved. The best is not behind. The rerouting wasn't the end, but the beginning of a greater unfolding. You are not only protected, you are positioned for a provision that will reveal, "This is the Lord's doing, and it is marvelous in our eyes." So lift your head. The path before you is alive with possibility, shaped by the unseen hand of the God who will never leave you unfinished. More chapters await, full of wonder, full of supply, full of the very presence that first drew you into this wild, beautiful journey. Pause with me for a moment, right here. Imagine the quiet of the early morning, when the world is not yet loud with demands. That's often when the Lord stirs my soul most, whispering reminders that shift my perspective. Let me share something the years have taught me. The real breakthroughs in life arrive not when we have everything in place, but when we're emptied of self-sufficiency, finally ready to receive what only God can give. Over and over, I have seen the pattern. God blesses beyond comprehension in ways that quietly defy all worldly expectations. There is a spiritual system, a current of supernatural supply moving just beneath the surface of reality. Most can't see it, but those who learn to trust, who listen for God's nudges more than the clamor of circumstance, begin to discover it flowing into every gap the world cannot fill. I recall a single mother in my congregation, worn thin, always thinking she was barely scraping by. Her neighbors saw her meager resources and pitied her struggle, but she told me, "Pastor, each time I think I'll run out, something shows up, groceries on the doorstep. A friend from years past with unexpected help, answers to prayers I never told anyone." She was living proof that the kingdom economy operates on principles entirely foreign to this earth. The truth, beloved, is this: your journey is not a puzzle to God. Every closed door, every sudden turn, every no rung in your ears has been orchestrated for a purpose far grander than surviving hardship. The hand of God is not only supporting you, but positioning you for influence, for testimony, for a provision that carries the aroma of heaven. Maybe you've started to see it. The moment you stop begging, striving, and manipulating outcomes, you realize something's changed. What you once chased begins to chase you. Heavy burdens become lighter because His favor now carries what your effort never could. I used to think success meant making things happen by strength and smarts. Now I see that true victory arrives when we step back, surrender, and let grace do what striving never can. It's natural to wonder, how can I keep building, keep trusting, when so little is visible? How do I press forward without certainty? Here's the secret: you don't need all the answers, and you don't need the whole path. God is not calling you to navigate tomorrow. He's simply asking for the next step. This sacred rhythm feels strange at first, like moving by muscle memory in the dark. I've counseled countless souls learning to walk by faith, not by sight. Some lose familiar companions, people who defined their journey, whose presence once seemed essential. But loss is rarely punishment. It's almost always preparation. Some connections fade because more room is needed for what's ahead. Some opportunities slip through your fingers only so hands will be open to receive greater gifts. I urge you, don't mourn what you lost so deeply that you miss what's being given. You did not fail. You were freed. Read that again. Your change in direction wasn't defeat, it was a divine redirection. In God's timeline, you are not behind. You're right on schedule for a spiritual promotion that the world cannot track. If you sense the world doesn't understand your pace, your rest, or your refusal to chase after the next thing, rejoice. Real trust stands quietly, anchored in the knowledge that God's leading is always timely and tailored, not measured by external achievements, but by internal alignment. Your life is a work God began. Do you think He would neglect what's dearest to Him? Absolutely not. When He sets something in motion, His blessing follows the assignment. Look for the fruit not just in outward gain, but in new wisdom, courage, and relationships that appear as if divinely set in place long ago. I've seen how provision sometimes arrives late in the eyes of man, but is never late in the eyes of God. Heaven's help comes precisely when your need meets God's purpose, never any other way. There will be moments where you feel the lack, and your heart aches for visible supply. But I promise you, if you hold to what God said above what circumstances shout, provision will materialize out of invisible places. The doors that no amount of networking or effort could open, favor will swing wide by a single whisper from God. The absence of wealth or status will not hinder his plan, for what he has fated for you cannot be earned or denied by anyone but him. Favor, I've come to learn, is the spiritual signature God writes into the story of the faithful. It defies calculation, slips past barriers, and draws out provision from unexpected quarters. Be it a new relationship, a sudden surge of physical or financial aid, wisdom for a problem you could not solve, or peace that passes all understanding in the thick of trouble. People may try to make sense of your journey, how you move ahead, how you withstand, how you build with little. They may look for earthly explanations and find none. Let them wonder. For your life is becoming a stage where the only logical answer is, God did it. You need not live by anxiety like the world. Faith does not require constant hustling, but steady believing. Every step taken in obedience, every word spoken in hope, every time you refuse to compromise, even when it hurts, that's when heaven's resources flow mightily toward you. I bless you to see your unseen storehouse, to realize that every ounce of quiet devotion, every hidden act of generosity, every prayer whispered alone has built a reservoir. When the time is ripe, you will see that fruit spill over from the invisible into the visible. And when the blessing comes, when you're offered help by a stranger, when an obstacle dissolves right before you, when provision arrives just as you needed, don't question it or shrink from it. These are signs of a higher realm at work. Receive them with humility, give honor to God, and let your very life be a testimony that provision doesn't flow from the world, it flows from trust in the one who truly provides. So, my friend, keep moving at the pace of trust. Each day you're not behind, you're exactly where purpose meets providence. Let the world puzzle and peers question. Your journey is evidence living, astonishing evidence of the God who delights to supply his children out of wells the world will never see. Pause with me now and imagine a scene I have lived through more times than I can count. You are quietly serving, doing right when no one is watching, praying late into the night, offering kindness with no expectation of return. Years may pass with no applause, no tangible reward. Yet, one morning, doors begin to open, opportunities come that you never lobbied for. People with influence suddenly notice you. Blessings arrive that cannot be traced to talent or connections. I tell you, as a father who has seen the hand of God move, this is not coincidence, but what I call the signature of favor. Favor is a mysterious, holy endorsement stamped by the unseen hand of God. You cannot manufacture it, nor can the world duplicate or block it. I have watched as those with little money or background step into positions once deemed unreachable, not by cunning, but by the quiet current of his blessing. I've watched other, more credentialed people scratch their heads, unable to explain how the unlikely were lifted and the ordinary promoted. Do not be surprised when your journey defies logic. That is precisely the point. So all may know this is God's doing and not yours. You are now on a path where material advantage, reputation, or family history cannot carry you. It is God granting you new territory, new assignments, new relationships that money could never buy. And sometimes he brings you straight to rooms you'd never imagined, seating you at tables your ancestors never thought possible, all for the glory of his name. There will be moments when support appears from utterly unexpected places. An anonymous gift, a minister you've never met, calling with encouragement, a job or contract that lands on your doorstep without networking or striving. Stranger still, people who once overlooked you may now become advocates and even allies, not because of your efforts, but because their hearts were quietly stirred by God's Spirit on your behalf. They may not even know why they are compelled to help you, but I'll tell you the spark is divine. At first, this favor might feel unfamiliar or even uncomfortable. Do not let old habits make you distrust it. Receive these blessings with humble courage, recognizing them as evidence that you are marked for a higher purpose. When grace begins to rewrite your story, your only task is to stay surrendered and grateful. This is the reason why old methods have been set aside. If you could have earned this next step, you would be tempted to claim the credit or depend on human structures. Instead, God is orchestrating circumstances to ensure everyone, including you, knows the supply is from Him alone. He is bypassing the usual channels, teaching you to rely on His Spirit rather than your status, skill, or connections. People will watch in amazement as your progress outpaces your visible means. They will ask, "How is it possible? How can you be advancing so quickly with such limited resources?" Let their questions serve as confirmation. This is the grace that ignites revival in those who observe, causing even skeptics to ponder, maybe there is a God who moves beyond human limitation. And the process is never just about you. As you walk forward in this odd, sacred favor, you become a living, breathing message. Every breakthrough, every provision that materializes out of nowhere, every peaceful night when you should have been afraid, all become powerful signals to others. Your life says what no sermon ever could. God keeps His word. He finishes what He starts. He still opens doors and upholds those who trust in Him. You don't need to have everything figured out or perfectly planned before stepping into the unknown. Let your story, marked by obedience and risk, assure others that God does indeed provide when the only thing you have is faith. There will come a moment when even those who doubted or misunderstood your path will have to acknowledge the evidence. They will see your stability, your joy, your growth, and their questions will ring out. Who is sustaining you? Who is backing your efforts? How does help always arrive right on time? Smile and tell them plainly, the provision comes from above. No other explanation will suffice. Remember this. Each act of faith, each word of life you speak into the darkness, each time you refuse compromise, even when easy options present themselves, God is watching. He sees beyond the surface, accounting for the quiet devotion and invisible tests you pass. Over time, the invisible dividends of heaven begin to manifest publicly, a truth I've seen played out in family after family, life after life, including my own. And so, the slow, hidden work of years' generosity when you felt empty, prayer in seasons of drought, loyalty in the face of indifference, all these investments culminate in a harvest of favor too expansive to track. People will see you rise, but they will never fully comprehend the deep roots beneath the surface. Trust. Then, in this sacred flow, the world may not notice your midnight prayers, your hidden acts of compassion, or your surrendered heart, but heaven does. And when the right moment comes, the world will be forced to take note, not for your glory, but for His. You are not simply being helped. You are becoming the actual evidence that God's promises are true. With every new provision, you affirm that faith is not naive optimism, but the highest form of reality. Each breakthrough whispers to onlookers, God did it. Let your journey make the invisible unmistakable. Get ready. Events are about to move more quickly than any background or lineage could justify. Doors will open, needs will be met before you speak them aloud. And when the world asks how this is possible, your story will point them, without pride or shame, to the God who provides to the favor that cannot be explained, or bought, or stopped. Let me draw you, just for a little while, into the sacred space of preparation, a season I know so intimately, and with which, if you walk long enough with God, you too will become well acquainted. It's the valley, the stretch of spiritual wilderness that separates the calling from the commissioning. And, if you let it do its work, it is the place where your destiny is not only clarified, but made unstoppable. People see the mountaintop moments, public victories, joy, the testimonies of doors flung open. What they rarely see is the silent pressure that forged every ounce of character, the wrestling, the waiting, and, at times, what felt like the very undoing of your soul. For years, I drifted through these seasons, praying for God to remove the strain, to make things easier, to fix my situation. Only later did I realize, what seems like falling apart is often God's process of putting you back together in a greater way. It is in the fire of discomfort, not on the couch of ease, that purpose is purified and your true capacity revealed. I have witnessed too many settle for comfort, shrinking back from what stretches them, forfeiting the destiny reserved for those who dare to trust the process. The enemy will always tempt you to stay in the familiar, to stay bound to yesterday, or to slip quietly back into the safe harbor of old habits. But hear me, every great calling requires the price of discipline, the humility to be refined, and the willingness to stay when everything in you wants to run. The truth is, growth is rarely glamorous. It is slow, painful, at times lonely. But look back through the annals of faith. Every hero, every luminary in God's kingdom was first sharpened in silence and obscurity. Abraham, Moses, David, Ruth, Esther, and even Christ himself experienced long years where their only audience was God, their only comfort, his whisper in the dark. In my own life, and in the lives of countless souls I have shepherded, I've learned that what feels like delay is really preparation. Those wasted seasons, those jobs or ministries that didn't pan out, the relationships that seemed to stall your growth, they were not accidents or consequences, they were classrooms. The pain you avoid, the hard conversation you never have, the old patterns you refuse to surrender, these may well be the very doors to your next level. Let me say this clearly. Sidestepping hardship is sidestepping maturity. No one ever became mighty in spirit without encountering honest struggle. In fact, the key to unlocking your future often hides behind the challenge you least want to face. I have counseled leaders afraid of the spotlight, young people shackled by the wounds of their past, parents hesitating to trust again because of sorrow. And always, the path forward is not around, but through the discomfort, through the honest assessment of what binds you, through the very conversation or circumstance you would rather avoid. You cannot radiate fully if you're still anchored to yesterday. You cannot become who you were made to be as long as you remain captive to comfort or paralyzed by past failures. Hear this, as someone who has spent decades watching lives shift from mere survival to radiant overcoming purpose. Your pain can shape you or define you, but only you decide which. God's aim is never to shatter you, but to chisel you like a master sculptor. He clears away what is not part of the masterpiece. His discipline isn't punitive, it's preparation. Jesus warned his followers that the road would be narrow, sometimes lonely, sometimes marked by opposition. But he also promised, "I will be with you always." His presence never departs, even when the night seems silent. It is easy, especially when disappointment lingers, to believe the lie that hardship means you missed God. But it is precisely the opposite. In the stories that matter, the fiercest struggles often arrive right before the birth of something unforgettable. The moments you feel most despised, discouraged, or defeated may be setting the stage for your true emergence. Every time you don't give up, every time you lift your head and keep moving, heaven notices. Your resolve in the furnace is worth more to God than gold. He is not always looking for strength, but for faithfulness. Not always for brilliance, but for courage that doesn't bow to pressure. I think of the times I almost quit. The pain was deep, the way was dark, the outcome uncertain. Now, standing on the other side of those nights, I realize those were the very seasons where I was anchored, not buried, where I was being fortified for a burden I couldn't carry with a weaker spine. Looking back, the places of greatest tears became the wells of deepest wisdom. My weakness held room for a holy strength. So do not despise the stretching. Ask not merely to escape it, but to persevere within it. Pray for endurance, not just relief. Because it is this pressure, this apparent breaking, that is making you unbreakable by mere circumstances or the voices of the world. These trials are not just arbitrary, they are purposeful tools in the hands of a sovereign God, preparing you for influence, for depth, for authenticity. Perhaps today you are holding back from something daunting, a step, a stretch, an apology, or a bold vision that aches in your heart. I urge you, your purpose is on the other side of what you're tempted to avoid. Don't wait for conditions to improve before you advance. Don't hide, linger, or hope the hard season outlasts you. The world is not changed by those who retreat. It is transformed by those who move forward, trembling but trusting. Progress rarely feels like power. In fact, it often feels like vulnerability. But it is in that honest frailty, that surrender, that God meets you in the desert, not in your palaces. The most significant growth happens when the crowds have turned away, when you're left in the quiet classroom of spirit, learning that God Himself is enough. Let me assure you, you are not falling apart. Each tear, each wrestle, each silent victory in the night is putting you back together, stronger, braver, more aligned with your assignment. The voices around you may not see it, the outcomes may not reveal it for years. But heaven knows, the one who refines you in secret will honor you in public, and what was meant for harm will become an anthem of hope for others. Spiritual maturity is never found on shortcut roads or broad highways. It is forged in the fidelity to walk the focused, often winding path, advancing one step at a time with the Spirit's guidance burning quietly within. Your story, your influence, your emergence is happening now, right in the pressure, right in the fire, right in the waiting. So even if today feels impossibly heavy, even if you sense you're barely holding on, know this: your power is not in the outcome, but in the courage not to quit. God is nearer than you think, closer in the storm than in sunshine, most active in your nights of wrestling and wondering. At the edge of your endurance, He is fashioning the foundation for your greatest season yet. Hold fast, you are at the threshold. Let me draw you in close, heart to heart, as we bring this journey to its summit. You are not here by accident. Every detour and delay, every closed door and silent night have all been woven into a tapestry more beautiful and resilient than you imagined. What you feel in this moment, the weight of your calling, the thrum of possibility beneath your trials, this is the point of crossing over. The Holy Spirit Himself has been ushering you quietly to the threshold of the now, preparing you to become not merely a receiver of provision, but a radiant example of providence for the world. In these last steps, realize this: your life is not just about you. The fire, the favor, the waiting, the miraculous support, these are not ends in themselves. They are being fashioned into a living parable, so that others might find hope and faith through the evidence you embody. You are becoming a message, a visible signpost of the faithfulness of God across all seasons. You will find, as I have, that there comes a time when your breakthrough is no longer only for your comfort, but for bearing witness. Every provision that arrives before you even know you need it, every opportunity that opens seemingly by divine appointment rather than human effort, each profound peace you carry, even while storms rage, these will not only sustain you, but inspire those who watched your struggle. People, some of whom have silently observed you for years, will come forward, curiosity bright in their eyes. How? They will ask again and again. How could someone with so little still advance? How did you keep going? What was your secret? In these moments, your answer will not be about formulas or clever strategies, but about a person, a God, who meets His children, who works in mysterious, perfect timing. Beloved, every time you choose trust over anxiety, step toward the light instead of hiding in the shade, you are releasing a ripple that extends far beyond your story. Others are watching. They will notice that your growth does not match your visible tools, that your resilience is strange, your peace uncanny, your pathway marked by guidance that outstrips logic. There is great power in accepting that your role is not just to be helped by God, but to become an actual demonstration of His heart. As you walk onward, favor will surround you like a shield. Support will spring up from unlikely places, sometimes through sudden ideas, sometimes open doors, sometimes the kindness of strangers moved by a sense they can't explain. Do not be surprised if your greatest impact flows from the very wounds that once threatened to undo you. The hardship you've endured is now fertile ground for new authority and compassion. People will be attracted not to your perfection, but to the authenticity of your story. A life once fallen, now raised. Plans once broken, now woven together in unity and grace. This is how God brings glory to His name, by carrying you with a force that cannot be manufactured and establishing you in places you had no earthly right to enter. His provision is not just for you to consume, but to shine forth. You are being set as a beacon, a city on a hill that cannot be hidden. As you move forward, resolve in your spirit that you will not shrink back when new forms of provision or support feel unfamiliar. Embrace the unexpected, receive help with gratitude and humility, and always give honor where it is due, pointing every question, every compliment, every amazement straight back to the true source. Let this season mark you with boldness. Step where you once hesitated. Speak where you once were silent. Give freely, for you have learned that generosity opens divine supply lines that the world will never see. Hold loosely every plan except the unwavering commitment to walk where God leads, regardless of worldly understanding. Do not fear the new. Sometimes the help you require will come through faces you do not know, platforms you never considered, and ideas that arrive in your heart as gifts from above. If God can provide bread from heaven and water from rocks, He can certainly arrange opportunities and support that defy every expectation. Remember, what the world cannot calculate, they will have to attribute to the miraculous. You will dwell in a place of wonder, continually surprised by the ways God moves people and circumstances in your favor, not because you have earned it, but because you have trusted and responded. I have spent decades marveling at this mystery, that God chooses ordinary people in ordinary places to become extraordinary signs of His kindness. That choice now rests upon you not as a burden, but as a birthright. The more you look to Him, the more you will see that you are not being carried along by chance, but supported by a story so divine that others will find their own courage through it. So I charge you, as one who has walked these valleys and crested these hills before you, do not hesitate, do not minimize the significance of your yes. The world awaits not another hero, but a real witness. In your workplace, in your home, in every quiet gesture and public act, let your reliance on God's supply be unmistakable. Let your life become the invitation that calls others to believe again. Let every moment of breakthrough, provision, and restoration in your journey sound the eternal refrain. God did this. He can do it for you too. And as others marvel and wonder, as they puzzle over the story they see in you, as they shift from skepticism to curiosity to hope, may you have the courage to point them again and again to a love that will not let them go. Your story is not finished. The unfolding will continue, each page written by the hand that knows the ending from the beginning. So step forward, beloved child. The path ahead is already alive with unseen provision and surpassing favor. Now is your time, not just to receive, but to reveal, until all who see your journey know, without a shadow of a doubt, that you are living evidence of the God who never fails, never forgets, and always finishes what He begins.